Hello and welcome to Ignite. Today I am delighted to be joined by Louise from the Croft House. Louise, welcome.
Nice to be here.
So I'd love to just start off with, can you give me an introduction into the Croft House, please?
Croft House is a knitwear online business that I started in 2012. So it's been going for quite a few years now. But when I first started, I had just had a new baby. So as time's gone on, I've been able to devote more time to the business, to the extent where now my husband has joined the business with me. So it's very much a family business that I now run. And I design feral patterns and lovely wool knitwear that we sell to customers literally all over the world.
And is that one of your jumpers and your patterns behind you?
One of my jumpers and
Beautiful.
lots of my patterns that you can see behind me, yes.
Fantastic. They are gorgeous. So tell me a little bit about where you're from. Where did you go to school? What were you like in school? What did you like to study?
I went to school in Aberdeen and I was very focused on what I wanted to do, which wasn't anything like what I now do. I wanted to study veterinary medicine when I finished school, so I was very focused. I knew exactly what subjects I had to take. I worked hard because it's an incredibly difficult course to get onto. I had an evening and weekend job working in a vet's, and in my school holidays I would go and work on farms to get experience. And I managed to get in, which was great. But after several years of studying, I came to the conclusion that actually it wasn't the right path for me. And it was a huge decision at the time to make, because obviously up until then, that's all what I'd wanted to do and wanted to be. So I made the decision to stop doing that, which was very difficult, especially when I didn't know what my path was then going to be. So after that, I did various things. I worked in fast food restaurants, I worked in food manufacturing, childcare, retail. And it was while I was working in retail and doing some self-studying that I was offered a management position. And I then ended up working in that sector for many years, working my way right up to regional management level. And that's really where my sort of background in retailing actually evolved. But I'd always had a passion for design. Even when I was at school, I did art. I'd never seen that as a pathway into a career for me. So I ended up then obviously looking around, wanted to sell beautiful traditional style knitwear of a really high quality, all made in Scotland. But I just couldn't find what I was looking for available in the marketplace. So I came to the conclusion I was going to have to start designing my own. And that's what led me into what I now do. And I'm totally self-taught. I've not gone to college to do this. It's purely come about through passion for what I do. And that's how the Croft House began.
That's fantastic. And there's so many moments in that story that you just said of kind of bravery where you had to take a leap and do something. So if we go back for a second, when you were in uni, you realized this wasn't for you. How did you get the nerve up to actually change? Because that's not easy once you've gone down this very big path. Well, talk to me a little bit more about that.
It was a really difficult decision because I think there's just very few sort of signpost moments in your life where you have a crossroads and you know full well that if you go one way or the other way, your life is going to go in a totally different direction. And that was one of those moments where you knew how big it was and how important it was. And it was a total leap of faith to do that. And even for a few years afterwards, you always had that question of, did I make the right decision? But obviously now looking back, absolutely, 100%. I wouldn't be anywhere where I am today if I hadn't done that. I'd never end up being a knitwear designer. That's just not something that I ever thought would ever happen in a million years.
I think often we think when we're young that we're supposed to know exactly what we want to do and we have this path that we want to go on. But so many people we talked to didn't know they wanted to do, or they thought they did, but then it wasn't necessarily what it was. And that's okay, actually. The route might be a little bit circuitous, but it will get you to a really interesting place in the end.
Absolutely. And I think it's an important life lesson as well. That's obviously a very major example of how my life could have been so totally different. But in business, you have to be able to adapt and evolve all the time and make decisions like that and take risks. You just have to.
So the other big risk, obviously, you're in a place where you want to find these patterns you can't use. So you decide, I'm going to do this myself, which is, again, quite brave and quite risky. You were not a designer. You didn't have the experience. So what were the first steps you took to actually make it a reality?
I basically just started knocking on doors. It was probably quite naive of me at the time, but I would just contact people and say, can you help me? This is what I'd like to produce. I'd do drawings and the colours that I wanted to use, and basically just say, can we work on this together? And that's, luckily, people gave me a chance, and that's how I started. And yeah, it's just snowballed since then.
And what's been a really proud moment or a big win for the business?
I think any time that I see anybody wearing one of my jumpers, and to this day, I still get a real buzz out of that. You know, you'll be in a restaurant or walking down the street and I'll see somebody, and even if I'm out with my family, you know, my daughter will nudge me and go, Mum, is that one of yours?
And they're super unique, right? So you'll know right away that they're
Absolutely.
yours. And what's, I think taking that leap to go into entrepreneurship when that hadn't really been your path, obviously was very, very brave. I know from personal experience that it's not an easy path necessarily. It can be quite challenging. So can you talk me through a couple of the tougher times? Like, what's been some of the challenges that you faced and how have you overcome them?
I think challenges come up on a very regular basis, and that's something you have to be prepared for. Obviously, being in business for the last few years, we've had all sorts of things completely out with our control. Obviously, the pandemic was incredibly challenging for all different sorts of reasons. Brexit has been incredibly difficult for any business that sells to customers in Europe. Cost of living crisis. There just always seems to be something that you have to try and negotiate the best way through.
And how do you do that? What are your techniques for managing challenge?
I think firstly to identify where the challenges are, and once you've done that, try and do as much research as possible into the various options that you've got to try and overcome them. You just have to try and be resilient with everything you do, and yes, there is risk taken, but also you have to know when to pull back a little bit and think, right, we just have to play this really cautious at the moment until we get through this phase, and then we can look at growth or doing something a little bit more abstract that maybe, isn't going to be the most commercial thing to do in terms of, selling things. But it's nice to have fun with the business as well. But you don't do that through a risky period. Yeah.
Fantastic. So there's challenges, of course, but you also mentioned it's good to do fun things with the business. So let's talk about some of those fun things. So what are the ways in which you get the word out? How do people find out about your products?
Well, we're mainly online, so obviously a lot of what we do is just the standard advertising online, but we do like to get out and about. For me, it's really important as a designer to actually be able to get feedback from customers, and the best way to do that is to talk to people. So we like to do pop-up shops. We travel around the country at various times of year, whether it be Christmas markets or summer shows. And it's really nice, not just from a selling point of view, to get out to customers and see them directly, but also to hear their feedback and see what they want to see next. And it often sparks ideas for me. I'll be sitting there with a notepad, quickly running through the back and making a little note of the next colour or the next shape or whatever it is that people have got an idea about. That certainly helps me in my design process.
You talked about that when you came into this, you didn't have experience, right? How did you educate yourself on what you needed?
I think we're very lucky now in the fact that the internet has pretty much everything you need to know. You can find that information if you dig deep enough, and also find a variety of different sources. I think it's important to take your information from lots of different places and try and become as educated as you can about the area that you're working in. So yeah, I do a lot of research from a design point of view when it comes to things like trends and colours. In terms of the actual business practices, I might join up to a certain blog or a group that is interested in maybe textiles or, for instance, women in business, and have different voices from all different sectors that you can draw on for advice and also just general guidance whenever you need it.
I'd love to talk about your life as an entrepreneur. What are the bits about it that you really love?
I think the freedom of being able to go down your own path. From a lifestyle point of view, it is very hard work, but it also allows you to sort of go at your own pace. And certainly when I first had my daughter, it was really nice to be able to spend that first few years with her, but also run the business in the time when she wasn't around, when she was asleep or maybe when she was at nursery. So that flexibility is really, really good. Although you do find yourself working very strange hours because of it.
Completely. What do you think is your superpower that makes you a great entrepreneur? What skills do you have that really lend themselves to it?
Organisation is one of my powers, definitely. You have to be incredibly organised. If you're wearing many hats like I have to, just knowing where to spend the time on different things and being able to adapt, definitely, that's important as well.
So as an entrepreneur, what hats do you wear? What does a day look like for you?
A day, I would start in the business checking my emails to see what's been going on in the business. Obviously being e-commerce, it's 24/7, so things happen overnight. And of course we're working with customers who are all over the globe, so they're all in different time zones. So once I've checked to see what's been happening on the website, then I start with my accounts every morning. And then once I've done that, I'll then go back to start looking through customer service questions to make sure that everybody's had answers to all the queries that they need. And then I normally help with checking the stock that we have for the sales that we've had through the day. And along with all that, I have to think ahead. So that's the day-to-day, but I also have to be thinking ahead all the time, especially with my business where I often have to place orders maybe 6 months in advance of needing items. So it's very much the case of trying to work out what I'm going to need in terms of stock and making sure that we're not going to run out of things at crucial periods in the year. So I'm always having to think ahead. And of course, in amongst all that, I'm doing marketing. So we've got social media, thinking about pop-up shops, organising those, so that there's an awful lot that I have to do.
So as an entrepreneur, you're balancing your time between really day-to-day stuff like checking stock levels and answering customer support, finance, marketing, etc. One of the things I noticed there is you didn't talk a lot about actually doing design.
I would love to spend a lot more time on design than I do, but it ends up being actually such a tiny part of my actual business. Customers always come first. So yeah, I basically always put them first.
It's an important lesson though for someone thinking about being an entrepreneur, and you want to go into an area that you really love and an area you're incredibly passionate about like design, but you also need to get all of these other skills because in order to have a successful business, you need to be able to think about the finances and the organization and the customer support and the marketing and all of that. So getting that well-rounded breadth of skills rather than just only focusing on the one thing you're super passionate about is incredibly important, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's really important that you're prepared to know about all those different areas because without them, the business can't survive.
Okay, so let's talk about some tips that you might have for potential entrepreneurs that are listening to this. If you were in their shoes back when you were in school, what do you wish you knew? What tips might you give them?
I think, first of all, don't have a very clear plan. Be prepared to adapt. That's really important. Always be looking ahead for the future. There might be something else on the horizon that you can incorporate into whatever you do, or maybe you find yourself totally changing direction. I think always try to better yourself as well. Try to learn new skills yourself and evolve your own skill set.
And what would you say if someone was thinking, I couldn't possibly do that because I don't have that entrepreneurial sort of thing in me? What would you say to somebody that says, I don't think it's
I'd say if you've got passion for something, then you certainly should give it a go, because I tend to find that if you're really enthusiastic about something, you'll find a way around. You don't necessarily have to be the best at maths or whatever to be able to do all these various things. The important thing is that if you try hard, then you'll probably find a way. And if you can't do it yourself, you'll find someone who can help you do it. So it's certainly worth giving it a go.
Absolutely brilliant. I love that. And I think a lot of times people have the perception that something like design and knitwear and things like that, oh, that's a hobby, that's not a business. But you are living proof that it is a business and you can absolutely delight people all over the world with what you're doing, but also create a great life for yourself. So that's wonderful.
Absolutely. It's great to be able to get out of bed every day and really enjoy what I do.
Fantastic. Any final words for our listeners?
I would always say to anybody, try to be the best version of yourself that you can be. It doesn't matter what you end up doing, but I think if you've got passion for what you do, then you're going to be happy doing that, and that's ultimately the most important thing that there is.
Brilliant advice. And last thing I want to just touch base on is what's next for the Croft House? What can we expect?
I'm not sure. We're going to continue obviously as we are, hopefully delighting all our customers all over the world, and it would be great one day if that we could maybe open a shop. So maybe that's, you'll see us on a high street somewhere near you soon.
We will be on the lookout for it, and we will be on the lookout for your incredible designs out in the world. And thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak with you, and your story is brilliant. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks very much.
Thanks.